Hello everyone, my name is Marina Patterson and I'm a student at Bloomsburg University majoring in political science and Spanish with a minor in international studies. For this presentation, we were given the liberty to choose our own topic so long as it discussed America's role in the world. I decided to conduct my research on global poverty and the United States' contribution because it is a major human rights issue nations both developed and developing are facing today. Before I get into the specifics on the United States' contributions to combating this issue, I want to start off with some statistics and facts about global poverty. This screen capture at the top of the slideshow is one that I took from the World Poverty Clock, which shows how many people are living in extreme poverty today. So as you can see, roughly 609 million people are living in extreme poverty, making up about 10% of the population. But what does it mean to live in extreme poverty? A person experiencing extreme poverty lives off less than $2.15 per day. But how is this universal number calculated? This guide to understand who lives in extreme poverty is based on purchasing power parity, which is the rate at which one country's currency is converted into another. And while 10% of the population faces extreme poverty, over 2/5 or 40% of the population live on less than $5.50 a day, still below the poverty line. This issue, although it is one the entire world faces, disproportionately affects the African continent, specifically in the sub-Saharan region. Between 2010 and 2020, 26 countries in this region faced dramatic increases in extreme poverty, and today the majority of the population in sub-Saharan Africa continue to face this issue. In all regions of the world, women and children make up a vast majority of the poverty numbers. Children and the youth make up 2/3 or 66% of the world's poor, and women represent a majority in most regions. On a more positive note, many countries have successfully reduced their poverty rates, including India and China, in which they were able to help more than 407 million people out of poverty. Now that you know what extreme poverty is and areas in which poverty is more apparent, it is important to understand what attributes to high poverty rates. According to Interaction, the top 9 causes of global poverty include inadequate access to clean water and nutritious food, little or no access to livelihood or jobs, conflict, inequality, poor education, climate change, lack of infrastructure, limited capacity of the government, and lack of reserves. Although poverty causes hunger and prevents people from accessing clean water, there are also bigger reasons why people struggle to escape extreme poverty. If a person does not have access to proper water and nutrition, they will not have the energy or the health to be able to work. Little or no access to livelihoods or jobs contribute to poverty rates because limited access to productive land, either because conflict, overpopulation, or climate change threatens many jobs and livelihoods of the people. Conflict is an issue because this could lead to violence and mass influxes of refugees. Some countries may be more prone to conflict than others due to its natural abundance of a certain resource. This could lead to a resource war, many of which we have seen in the Middle East and Africa, which are also countries that are more poverty-stricken. Inequalities contribute to poverty due to the lack of opportunities for advancement. Many jobs today require some type of education degree, but because many families cannot afford to send their children to school, most people in extreme poverty do not have an education. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization estimated that 171 million people could be lifted out of extreme poverty if they had basic reading skills. Climate change, as discussed briefly before, could damage productive land, slowing the agricultural growth and destroying many lands and homes and affecting the overall ecosystem. A lack of infrastructure makes it more difficult to reach places that need help both physically and technologically. For example, no cell phones or internet could isolate communities in rural areas. In the United States, our government has provided us many programs and services to aid American citizens. However, not every government can supply proper aid to their citizens, leading to food insecurity and many other issues to follow. In order to combat poverty on a global scale, widespread action needs to be taken. That is why the United States, along with many other countries, have been working endlessly to foreign aid to those in poverty. The United States contributes the most money towards foreign and humanitarian aid, and in 2021 alone spent $38 billion. It is important to also note, however, that foreign aid only accounts for less than 1% of the federal budget in the United States, so it is important to recognize that there are some areas in which we could reevaluate where some of that spending is allocated in order to have drastic change within poverty rates. The U.S. also utilizes several nonprofit groups and federal agencies, such as the Innovations for Poverty Action, which is a nonprofit that promotes effective solutions to global poverty, the United Nations Children Funds, or UNICEF, and the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. Because of the efforts of the United States, they have been able to assist nearly 40 nations and, in a U.S.-led effort, dramatically decrease the global extreme poverty rates. The U.S. government also passed bills in order to allocate funds to different resources to different nations in need. For example, the Electrify Africa Act, which helped expand access to electricity in the Sub-Sahara, and the Global Food Security Act, which builds on the importance of agricultural-led economic growth, leading to the eradication of poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. The United States also utilizes intergovernmental organizations, one of which the United States have been a member of since its founding, the United Nations. In 2015, the United Nations member states met and listed 17 Sustainable Development Goals in order to create a peaceful and prosperous society. This was a call to all countries emphasizing the urgency of meeting these goals. The first goal is to eradicate poverty. Once we do this, the other 16 goals will fall into place. Along with these goals is an agenda to help eradicate poverty and reach all sustainable goals by 2030, which is the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Along with our efforts to combat poverty, there have been two major setbacks in recent years to meeting these goals. The first is COVID-19. In 2020, the world experienced a pandemic that brought much change to the world. Many people lost their jobs, which led to more people going into poverty. In fact, because of COVID, the number of people living in extreme poverty increased to about 50 million between 2019 and 2020. By 2026, the number of people living in poverty is expected to lower to 525 million, which means we will be unable to reach the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The second major setback is the war in Ukraine. Due to the war, up to 71 million people are projected to face severe poverty. This is not only due to the people losing their jobs and having to flee, but the war has also impacted international prices for resources such as energy and food products, causing a surge in food insecurity. This also greatly affects children, as they make up about 40% of the poverty rates in Ukraine and Russia. The increase of child poverty could result in more infant deaths due to malnutrition and a decline in education rates. This war, however, cannot be seen as a single phenomenon, since it combines with more than a decade's worth of accumulated crises such as the international financial crisis, economic tensions between the United States and China, and the pandemic. Although the world will continue to face obstacles when trying to defeat the issue that is global poverty, the United States, the United Nations, and the other member states will continue to fight until poverty is eradicated.